Day Free Alberta have remained focused on inclusion, transparency, and democratic legitimacy. Mitch continues to champion a bottom-up approach to leadership, one that values participation, dialogue, and shared ownership of outcomes, ensuring that Alberta's future is shaped by the will of the citizens of Alberta. Please welcome Mitch Sylvestre.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Nice to come back to Lethbridge. 7-hour drive today. I left Bonneville at 8:30 this morning and got here at 6. I had to make a couple stops along the way, but with all the new people here in the room, I would do it again tomorrow. Because that's what this is all about. So, just understand what's happening. It's hard to understand, especially if you're new here and you've never heard this presentation. It's a very hard presentation to listen to. Because this isn't the Canada I grew up in. This is the Canada that I want back. I want Canada back, the Canada that I grew up in. I want that back. And that's the reason I'm doing this, the only reason. I just, this year, started getting my expenses paid. I'm not taking a wage. I've been doing this for 4 years. I can guarantee you that it cost me $50,000+ last year to run around Alberta and talk to people. And the reason I'm doing it is because I like you. And the other reason I'm doing it is because I don't see much future for my kids and my grandkids. And also know this, I was never, ever involved in politics till 4 years ago. All I ever did was vote. I didn't even pay attention to politics, which is how come we're here. None of us paid attention to politics. We basically went and voted. I run a business, and I've been running a business for this is year 49 now. And I started when I was 21. I got out of university, graduated from the U of A with a biology degree with a minor botany, and I hated it. So I had to find a business or a reason to live in Bonneville where I wanted to live, where I still am. So I opened this sporting goods store 49 years ago as a 21-year-old, and I've been doing it ever since. But I'm going to ask you a question. How many 21-year-olds today can get into business on their own? How many kids can buy the farm? Literally. And you know we're the most taxed country in the world. So I want you to understand something. I can remember the first day that somebody said to me, "Hey, Mitch, would you come to a meeting?" And I didn't want to go. I was busy. And they said, "Mitch, you got to come to a meeting." 3 times she came to get me. The 3rd time I went. And this is what I'm going to relate to you is the important part of this, because I was driving downtown Bonneville, going to a meeting in the town I grew up in, during lockdown, during COVID, and I wasn't comfortable. And that's when I knew something was wrong. How could I not be comfortable going to a political meeting in my own hometown? Well, I'm going to share something else with you. How big a decision do you think it was for me to be the proponent of that question? Being in business, in a small town, knowing that I might offend half of my customers or more. But it was worth it, and I think it will be ultimately worth it, or I wouldn't be here talking to you about it. And the question is this, let's talk politics now. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state? Now that is a very hard question. We went to court last week again. In Canada, you cannot even ask a question anymore. You cannot petition government. We've had a big week with all the floor crossings, the unelected Liberal majority, the fact that they shut our court case down, they stayed it. So how long is it going to stay stayed is the problem. So Lorna alluded to the fact that I'm a bottom-up kind of guy. So I'm a UCPCA chair for Montreal Lake St. Paul. And my CA is run by the members. Our MLA comes to every one of our board meetings and listens to our guys. And I'm going to share with you, we've had some pretty animated meetings. Really animated meetings, honest to God. Our MLA is mindful, is a good word, of our board. But this is the thing I'm going to tell you. The fact that they stayed that decision, and I knew it. 4 weeks ago, if you're a member of Stay Free, I called it. I said, we're not going to win, even though there's no way we should lose. And if you watch the court case, you understand doubly that our lawyer, Jeff, did a great, great job, and we should have easily won that. But they stayed it. So there's several things happening there that I want you to understand. The UCP made every rule that allowed it to go to court. Okay? I'm not slamming Danielle. We're here. The problem is, we're not there yet. The biggest part of this fight is coming. We understood, and you'll understand when I'm done here, how much is at stake, not only for Alberta, but for the rest of Canada. So, I'm going to ask you early in this process, you have leverage. And this is what the leverage is. And I've been saying this for 4 years. This is not a tonight thing. I brought more people to the UCP AGM from my CA than any other CA in Alberta 4 years in a row. Because I think it's important that you participate in democracy. That's what I'm doing. I would like everybody in the room, regardless of how you feel about this, to have your voice heard. You have to buy a membership in the party that is in government so that they can hear you. If we do not, the government will do as it pleases. But however, if we put 50,000 more members in the UCP, which is possible with our group, we could sway the UCP to allow us to actually finish this process. And if we do not do that, it will show them that we don't care. And I've got some bad news for all of you. We are going to never, ever not watch those people ever again. We will never end up here in our lifetime again, where we are. And we're going to start the presentation with, from now on, I'm warning you, right now, it's all true, and it's very hard to listen to. We desire, and every Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairies shall go to enrich our own people in the East, to build up factories in the workshops of Eastern Canada and contribute in every way to its prosperity. That is basically saying that we are a colony. Alberta is a colony. Alberta and Saskatchewan are colonies. That has been the way it started, and it has never changed. Everything we produce and everything we earn goes away from Alberta. Our relationship in Confederation is a business relationship. In my own business, I belong to 2 buying groups. I belong to one for my outside sports, the hunting, fishing, all manner of that kind of stuff, and then I belong to another one for my team sports. In my outside sports, we buy in the USA with 450 other American stores and about a dozen Canadian stores now. I was the first one there. We buy bigger than Cabela's. So what does that allow us to do? That allows us to sell at the same price as Cabela's and make a profit. That's what buying groups do. Buying groups do things that the individual store cannot do on its own. So Confederation is supposed to do the same thing. Confederation is supposed to make every province better off and the whole group richer. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole business arrangement that we're in. However, the people in the East don't look at us as a contributing member, and they don't want us to be richer. They want to take everything we have. And this is the attitude. Screw the West, we'll take the rest. And that's in the 80s, that's 50 years ago. That has not changed. The entire system is set up so that we cannot win. The West has 104 MPs, the East has 239 MPs, for a total of 343. That country, understand this, is cut right in half. In Alberta, it takes 125,000 people per MP. In Atlantic Canada, it's 38,000 people per MP. The Senate, which is appointed, has 24 senators in the West and 81 in the East. 2 justices in the West, 7 in the East. So the reason I'm showing you all that is because I'm going to show you how come we cannot open the Constitution. In 1980, remember about the business arrangement, Mark Lalonde said, we could not let Alberta become the center of economic power in Canada. And I'm going to ask you a question, why not? Why could we not let our richest, most productive province be the center of economic power while it was that? Why would we actively sabotage our biggest industry? How does that not hurt every Canadian? How does that not hurt everybody in Canada? If you were in business like I am, and we had a great, just for example, in my team sports store, United Cycle in Edmonton, is the biggest independent sporting goods store in Canada, and they're a member of our group. So they allow us to buy better because they're the biggest independent sporting goods store in Canada. So their volume goes on top of our volume. So as a consequence to that, we can all buy again at a much better price, build our own equipment at a special price point, upgrade it, and sell it for the same price as competition. What if United Cycle wasn't happy? Would we try to accommodate them a little bit so that we could be better off? Well, of course we would. So Mr. Carney, when he got into power, knew that he was going to have major projects. I had Danielle Smith on the town hall, and I was asking her questions right after Carney was elected. I said, Premier, what do you think of Mark Carney? She said, you first. But I said, that being the case, how long are you going to give him before you come down our path? She said 6 months. Okay, that was October. It's been 4 or 5 months since then. But here, look at this. He knew we were angry. He knew this was a possibility. He gave 4 major projects to BC, 1 to Saskatchewan, 1 to Manitoba, 2 to Ontario, 2 to Quebec, 3 to Quebec, 1 to New Brunswick, and 1 to Newfoundland. Isn't it amazing that he missed Alberta? Like, he literally gave everybody else one except Alberta. And we're the people that were angry. Why would he not give Alberta one? Is my question. Like, business-wise, how does that make any sense? And I said to the Premier, I said later on in another meeting, I said, it's like he's poking a stick in your eye. And just because I can see you're trying really hard to make this work, and they're doing everything in their power not to make it work. They block pipelines for Alberta only. A tanker ban in the West only. Blocks oil and gas investment here. There was a meeting last week. The Premier was at the meeting. Brian Jean was at the meeting. The gentleman that was presenting was a major player in a big oil company, and he basically told them at the meeting that he had been to a meeting in the USA with the top 20 US people, not US, worldwide people that purchase oil. He told the Premier that they will not invest 1 penny in Alberta while we have an industrial carbon tax. All of them. So he set the bar. There you go. This is as recent as last week. And the carbon tax was ruled illegal in Alberta. But the Prime Minister's office, appointed Supreme Court, said, no, we're not going to pay attention to that. We're one of the very few countries in the world with a carbon tax. We're the only major oil-producing country in the world with a carbon tax. We lose $47 billion net to Ottawa every single year. We send them $70 billion. We get 23 back for the services that they have here in Alberta. But we lose $47 billion net a year. So now I want you to unpack this. Let's make this so that you get it. That's $40,000 per Alberta household. That means that in your lifetime, you give Ottawa a free house. Because that's a $3,400 a month mortgage payment that you're sending there. Every month.
Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that we have our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stay here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stay here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it places that vote Liberal.
In places that vote Liberal. So I'm going to explain that to you. The $20 to $25 billion that she's talking about, which is different than the $47 billion that I'm talking to you about, is in literal transfer payments alone. Okay, it doesn't include the excise taxes, it doesn't include GST, it doesn't include any of that stuff. All right, so here, let's talk about equalization payments. There are 2 categories of provinces in Alberta, have and have not. You see, the western provinces are haves, and all the eastern provinces are have-nots. Figure that out. Ever been to Quebec? Ever been to Ontario? How do they qualify as have-not provinces? And I'm going to tell you how that works. After the referendum in Quebec, they found a way that they wanted to keep Quebec in Canada. So what did they do? They told Quebec that we're not going to put Hydro-Quebec in your balance sheet, which is their largest industry. So it makes them a have-not province. However, our oil patch goes into our balance sheet, which makes us a $27 billion a year giver to the other provinces. And that's $13.3 billion to Quebec, and that's year after year. Now, this is why you'll never open the Constitution. This is transfer payment money per province, per taxpayer. We give Manitoba $5,900 a year per taxpayer. Ontario, $67, they're not that bad. Quebec, $2,800. New Brunswick, $6,500. Nova Scotia, $5,800. PEI, $6,100. 1, 2, 3. How many of those 5 provinces are ever going to vote to end equalization? Never happened. That's per person, per household. That's $1,000 a month per household if there's 2 wages there that they would have to come up with if Alberta wasn't giving them the money. So what you need to open the Constitution is the support of 7 out of 10 provinces with 50% population. We've found 5 that will never, ever open the Constitution. You need the support in the House of Commons and the Senate, which goes to my last slide, which is very heavily Eastern favored. And all that money, you go back a couple slides, goes from the West to the East. So those MPs are never, ever going to vote to open the Constitution, and neither will the Senate, because they'll lose a cash cow. Let's talk about pension. You will not lose your pension. If you have paid into CPP your whole life, the government has a legal obligation to give you your pension. Every pension has a portability clause. You can live in an independent Alberta and have a dual citizenship and get your pension. Or you could live in Costa Rica or Panama or anywhere in the world and get your pension. That's the way it works. I've done 100 town halls on pension. And I'm going to tell you how scandalous this pension is. There's 2 net givers in all of Canada. Look at that red line there. That's Alberta. That means that we give that much more than everybody else. Everybody else is a net taker. Our seniors say, hey, they're going to take our pension away. Well, look at that line. Who's paying the bill? We can afford to pay your pension. Part of that $27 billion, we could pay your pension. But our workers contribute $9 billion a year to CPP because they're younger, they work harder, and they make more money. Because we work harder, we contribute more. Right? So there's a $3 billion overage there, right? $9 billion, $6 billion, $3 billion more than we collect. So what happens to that $3 billion? Ontario said, when the CPP Act was formed in the 60s, that anything that they overpay, they wanted to put into a fund for Ontario. So, and then with interest, they want to be able to call it back at any time they want. So we've been overpaying since the 60s. And we can call this pension back anytime we like. So Jason Kenney did a study, a life work study, and said, how much does Canada Pension owe us? $335 billion. And that's 2 years ago. The new number is $400 billion. So why are we not calling that pension back?
Why aren't we?
I don't know. I've asked the Premier multiple times. That's why I did 100 town halls on pension. We were going to move the needle to get Albertans to understand that if they pay us the $400 billion that they owe us, at the 9% interest or 9.5% interest that the CPP fund's claiming it's getting, that would be a $40 million interest net per year. I'm just rounding the numbers off here. Plus our 9, we'd have $49 billion income with a $6 billion payout. We can afford to give our seniors, and this is seniors' money. This money belongs to Alberta seniors. It doesn't go to government, it doesn't go in the government fund, it stays there in a pension fund. That's the way the whole thing is designed. So we can afford to give our seniors a 6-fold increase in pension. That would be $36 billion. And we'd still be able to put $13 billion a year on top of that into the fund. And guess what? And guess what? Listen to this. Even if they gave us half, if they gave us $200 billion and we used the other $200 billion as credit to what, in independence, because there's going to be a negotiation, we would still get $20 billion plus 9, and we pay our seniors 6. We could easily triple the pension and still put a whole bunch of money in the bank every year. But the other part of it is this. We can invest it in Alberta. Mr. Carney invested $50 billion of Alberta's pension funds in India. Because we're half the pension. We're literally half. So I want to ask you a question. Hands up, anybody believes that we'll ever see that $100 billion again? And Let's go back to the major project slide. Instead of giving that $100 billion to India, he could have built 2 major projects in Alberta with that. That would have made money. But he didn't want to invest it in Alberta. Why? I got some bad news for you. Everywhere Mr. Carney goes, Mr. Carney is an economic hitman. He's the reverse Midas. He makes countries poorer, not richer. The whole goal of what's going on now is, we'll discuss it, but you will see. When I became premier, I thought I could fix everything in 6 or 7 months, but everything is broken. That's me talking to Danielle 2 years ago. She had just got into power. She was talking about Alberta Health. But the point is, if it's too broken to fix at her level, what's wrong? It's too corrupt to fix. There's the problem. Alberta's the richest country in the world. We have the highest GDP in the world if we get independent. The highest GDP in the world. Our GDP in the last 10 years nationally, and I'll show you a slide, has grown 1.2% in 10 years. You cannot do that with what we have unless you try. Okay? So understand this. They know what they're doing. They're consciously doing it. They're suppressing industry. Danielle, on many occasions, called it sabotage. Sabotage is a war word. Why would our federal government sabotage our industry? It makes no sense to me. And I'm not going to try to explain it, but it started 10 years ago, in earnest, when the Liberals got back into power. And we're going to discuss what happened this week. I'm saving that. An audit of $187 billion worth of Liberal infrastructure spending finds 20,000 missing projects. That means that the projects were paid for but not built. 20,000 missing projects. Do you know that they shut Staff's Can down this week? Well, I'm going to show you why. Because a report of the Auditor General of Canada to the Parliament of Canada in 2025 said this. We found that in 54% of contracts examined, federal organizations had evidence to show that all services and deliverables were received. So 56% of the projects were built. However, in 46% of contracts examined, we found that federal organizations had little to no evidence to support that deliverables were received. 46%, half. So they're stealing half of that. 187 billion, that's $93.5 billion missing. That's according to Auditor General of Canada. And that's last year. Did you see that in the news? Are you concerned?
Yes.
Mr. Gilbo took $254 million, put it in his company, nobody said a word. Mr. Trudeau, $400 million green slush fund, missing, had to resign over it, couldn't hide it. Mr. Carney said after the election, oh, that was last year. Don't worry about it, it's only $400 million. $250 million for a vaccine factory that never built a vaccine. We're at $1 billion, and I don't know any of that kind of stuff. You remember when Chrystia Freeland tried to hide that $2 billion and that senator found out, and she was giving her the gears about it? Oh, I wasn't aware. This lady here only stole $130 million. She's a cabinet minister. Her name is Marianne G. She promised, business startups and creating jobs. She didn't do that. But the $130 million is missing. And even when ArriveCan was a $70 billion deal that cost $1 million to build, and they were found guilty, and the judge sealed it for 75 years. How's that work? If you did not pay your taxes, I'm talking $7,500, not $75 million, how long do you think it would take them to get you? What about this? Mr. Trudeau spent $11 billion on overseas gender programs. Do you believe that? I want to ask you a question. First of all, how do you do it? What could you possibly invest $11 billion on gender programs? What could you do? And the second thing I want you to know is this, and I don't know this is true, I'm just kind of guessing, I'm playing games in my own mind here. If you're the president of a country overseas and somebody came to you and said, you know what, I'm going to give you $1 billion, but I want 900 million back. What do you think the odds are that would happen? That's money laundering. It's plain and simple. There's no way it's anything else. Foreign interference is the greatest threat facing Canada's national security, says CSIS. Trudeau must reveal which 11 federal candidates China reportedly aided. So I want you guys to do a little bit of research. Okay, I want you to listen to this. This slide was up on X this week. And he said that 4 of the conservatives that took China's money are the guys across the floor. How about that? Do a little bit of research. And so are the other 2. The NDP guys are all on this list. So, what do we have? We have our first unelected majority. We have people walking across the floor. The lady in the territories got $500 million government project, and she has 2 employees. They're doing it right in the open. They don't even care. Over 120,000 mail-in ballots went uncounted in the last election. RCMP aware of 4,000 organized crime groups operating within Canada. Why is that? We have no money laundering. We have no racketeering rules. Why do we not have money laundering and racketeering rules? Why do we not have stricter rules?
Because the Liberals do it.
How much crime has risen in Canada since the Liberals were in power in the last 10 years? Human trafficking, extortion, child pornography, firearms crimes. I wonder how many of those criminals are going to give up their guns in October. The Liberals, since their power, when C-75 passed, look at the increase in crime. Why is that happening? What is the point of that? Because it destabilizes our economy. It focuses us somewhere else. The news is talking about all this. People are saying, oh my God, with all this stuff going on, and we're not paying attention to what they're doing. Alberta, largest ever fentanyl lab ever, around Fox Creek. How did all that 16 tons of chemical to make fentanyl end up at a super lab in Alberta? Well, guess what? BC only inspects 1% of its cargo in the Port of Vancouver and the Port of Prince Rupert. 1%. So we'll go back to who the guys are that are cheating in our elections. The same guys that are bringing fentanyl into the country. And you can buy anything you want in the street of BC. The government of BC says, we're going to offer smokable fentanyl for safe supply. How do you think that's going to go? How do you think that's going to go? We're going to offer smokable fentanyl to drug addicts. And you know what I found out about 2 weeks ago? How much do you think it costs to buy fentanyl on the street?
$5.
Not 5, it's $3 a pill. So just unpack that for a minute. Those guys can steal $20 or pick up $20 worth of bottles and get high for a week. So what do you think they're trying to do to them? I don't know, I'm not going to tell you.
The biggest security threat to Canada is China. We're heartened by the leadership of President Xi Jinping and the speed with which our relationship has progressed in recent months. I believe the progress that we have made in the partnership sets us up well for the new world order.
So now, he didn't tell you what that was, right? So how does it work that in January, China's our biggest enemy, according to
The
him,
biggest security threat to Canada is China.
and then 6-7 months later, we've got this deal going with the Communist Chinese, and we're going to change our entire political system. We're going to change the whole thing. The New World Order, according to Carney's book, says it's a social credit system. That freedom will be redefined. This is in values. You can go find it yourselves. The pages are there. The government will control every part of your life. You will own nothing. These are Mr. Carney's own words. Business will serve politics. Is that what's happening right now? Your money will be tracked. You want to know how hard it is for us to get signatures on this petition because of that? Because of what happened in the trucker convoy? I hear it every time I go out. I hear it every single day from everybody that's collecting signatures. They're going to freeze my bank account.
Yeah.
People are scared. People are afraid of our own government. I hear it every day. Markets must be morally correct. By whose standard? Experts will replace democracy. You know those experts? You remember those experts during COVID that were on the news every day? Experts say. Experts say this. Institutions must serve the World Economic Forum. How do you feel about that? Financial decisions will be judged by climate politics. What I'm trying to share with you is that we're in an emergency. This is not good. And he's saying it, and he's doing it. Did you see Mrs. Carney at the Liberal Convention? Oh, World Economic Forum, New World Order. They're not hiding it. And they're arrogant enough to tell you what they're going to do before they do it. It's almost like if you don't react to it, you're giving them permission. All right. So, none of this is an accident. This has been planned since Pierre Elliott Trudeau. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, with the new Constitution, started this mess. Justin Trudeau himself said there's no rules, they make laws to protect you from that people. There are entire South American countries that under Barack Obama emptied their insane asylums and literally sent them to the USA. Uncontrolled immigration. And that's not a secret, that's common knowledge. And the guys, the presidents, the premiers of those countries said, why would you not get rid of those people? If they're going to take them. All right, so this is the first step. This is the ring that controls all the rings. This is how we got here. In 1954, there was a statute in the Criminal Code of Canada that said it was illegal for media to lie to the public. However, in 2019, Bill C-39 was voted on and passed in Parliament to remove that. So in 2019, the government decided that they should lie to you, because they passed a bill to do it. So the most of my life, government had to be truthful, and the press had to be truthful as well. I remember the day when Mr. Trudeau gave the press $700 million. And I said to my wife that morning, that day, I said, this is the beginning of the end of this country. Right there. Because here's the problem with all those people that don't see what I'm talking about. They're watching that news. And they've been watching it their whole lives, and for the most part, it was correct. Nobody knows that they changed the rules in 2019, just before COVID. Step two, the very foundation, the very concept of a nation founded by European settlers is offensive to me. Old stock white Canadians are an unpleasant relic and quite frankly replaceable. And we will replace them. Oh, they've been after me to take this down. That was 2015. And even if he didn't say it, which I totally believe he did or it wouldn't be there, look at what he's done. In 10 years, he brought 15 million immigrants into Canada. What does that do? That crowds the hospitals and crowds the streets and takes jobs away from our kids. And how does it affect Aboriginal people? The very same way. It takes jobs away from them. It makes them less competitive. Because that's the way it is. And I'm not mad at the immigrants. They came here for what I grew up with. They wanted to come here, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. They could worship their God. They could put their nose down, their butt up, work real hard all day, every day, and make enough money so that they could sleep at night in their own house peacefully and maybe have some left for the kids when they retire and put them through school. Because that's what happened. All the Ukrainian farmers that came over on the boat, all their kids are doctors, dentists, lawyers, and the ones that stayed on the farm are doing very well. Bonneville had the highest per capita millionaires in the world about 10 or 15 years ago because we produced 35% of Canada's oil in that area. And guess who was on the border of all that oil production? All those farm boys that were used to working really, really hard. They were picking rocks all summer, throwing bales, doing all that manner of stuff. And actually, I remember clearly when I was in high school, the difference between the farm boys and the tall boys. I gotta tell you what, those guys looked like they were in the gym all day, every day. I think the girls noticed too, I'm not sure, I remember. I think they did. But anyway, what I'm saying to you is this. If you wanted to work hard back then, and they had the opportunity that was presented to them, and they made a lot of money. I have friends that have $10 million helicopters because they started bathtub companies and worked really hard. That was the Alberta, Canada I grew up in. That's what I want for my kids. That's what I want for your kids. Opportunity to do it. This year, Florida's including 1.94 million people. Okay, so after 10 years of doing that, and now you bring another 2 million in. At some point, you're going to have to build a Calgary, Edmonton, just to house those people, and an infrastructure to support that. Because the first few years, you're using the stuff that was there, all the people that had vacant places, but 11 years later, it's not sustainable. And this is the problem, it's planned. This is from the United Nations. We must use migration about England to turn the English people into a minority in England. This will allow us to undermine the identity of the native English and import a new majority that will end the very idea of England. And this is critical for globalism to take hold of England. So it's a plan. And if you don't believe me, there's the paper. Replacement migration from the United Nations, 177 pages. Fastest growing cities in North America, 8 out of 10 are Canadian. There's some pretty big cities in North America. All of those countries in 24 years grew 5%. Canada grew 35%. That's the average from all those countries. And I put this slide in because it's interesting. The World Economic Forum says that Canada's ideal population would be 100 million. We're at 44 million right now. So the Indian High Commissioner volunteers to send 60 billion Indians here to make Canada what? India. It doesn't matter what country that is. It could be Germany, it could be Russia, it could be anybody. But if you send 60 million people here and there's only 40 million people in the whole country, what are you going to do? You're going to change the politics, which is the point, the identity of the people. You will lose your identity. Canada has 33 taxes, the highest in the world. Canadians pay between 43 and 53% in tax. So just understand this. You're allowed to do whatever the heck you do as long as you give government half of your wage. What do you think? That's exactly what that is. As long as you give government half your wage, you can become a doctor, dentist, whatever you want. But you got to give them half of your wage for the privilege of living here. Do you know what it was when my dad was in business? 6%. 6%. We've gone from 6% to 43 and 53%. Do you know what we're going to do? We're going to give you 20% tax rate off the bat on day one. 20%. And I'm going to tell you why we're going to do that. Because what is that going to do? All the best doctors are going to stay. All the best school teachers are going to want to come here because we pay them more than anybody in Canada, and then we add 20% on top of that. People will actually be able to afford to live here. We're going to have a massive migration of people coming to Alberta, and there's no doubt in my mind.
As long as they're
There they are. There's all those taxes. Carbon tax, personal income tax, corporate income tax, GST, excise taxes, fuel excise tax, alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, excise duties on everything else, customs duties, air travel, security tax, luxury tax, provincial territorial tax, capital gains tax, land transfer tax, media tax, regulation tax, CDP tax, business tax, estate tax. And, have you seen lately? Apparently 80% of seniors are in favor of the government taxing your paid-for home. Because that's the next tax that's coming down the pipe. 80% of seniors are in favor of that. I think that's propaganda. Does anybody understand what inflation is? Inflation devalues the money that you have. So if you have $100 in the bank, if they double the money supply, you can only buy half as much as you could have bought with your $100 a few years later. So, for example, if you had $60 in the bank in 2015, and you were a hunter, and you wanted to buy a box of ammunition, 30-06 Remington Core-Lock bullets for $29.99. So it was $60, you could have bought two. In 2025, you can only buy one, because I saw it, and that is exactly true. And everything in our business, we're selling $1,200 skates, $400 hockey sticks. It's nuts. It's plain simple crazy. But that's the price of things. And Mr. Carney's talking about 4 consecutive $100 billion deficits. They know what they're doing. They want you to be broke. That's why they're taxing the heck out of you, and that's why they're devaluing the money. Understand this, they print money. They print money. And they don't cut government expenses. Mr. Carney instead of putting $33 billion on a pipeline to BC, hired $33 billion worth of workers for government. So if you break that down, say $1 million will pay for 10 employees. Let's say 8 employees plus their offices and office space. Multiply that by 1,000. And then multiply that by 33. That's how many new employees you put in government just recently. What the heck are they all going to do? But instead of creating wealth by making a pipeline and creating jobs here, he put more people in bureaucracy. There it is. And $178 million to the CBC so they can lie to you. So, I told you about the carbon tax. So, the cap on production in Canada is carbon tax. So, if you're going to print money Or if you were going to borrow money as a business person, you would want to have the ability to pay it back. Because I've borrowed lots of money in my life. And what's the first thing you do? You look at your finances and say, hey, I've got to pay this principal back and I've got to pay interest. So I have to either increase sales, or hopefully I have the money there already. If that's the case, but then if I had the money, I wouldn't have to borrow it. So why would they cap production? It's going to cost between $6 and $10 more a barrel to produce Alberta oil because of carbon tax. How does that make sense? It only makes sense if I am right. If they're trying to stop industry, kill production, and make our people poorer. Oh, I love this. Okay, so again, in our buying group situation, let's go back to that. Let's go back to the household. So in my house, I have 5 kids. Okay? I had 5 kids in hockey at one time. Not gonna lie to you. Thank God for my mom and dad. And I was coaching. Anyways, so just saying, how would it be if my grown adult kids now bought the sporting goods in another store? That wouldn't make me very happy. Because it would make our competitors stronger. It would make us less strong, right? As that's how it works. So we got a tanker ban on the west coast, but Quebec brings in 1 million barrels of oil a day in the same boat down to St. Lawrence. We're buying oil from Saudi and Russia and everywhere else in the world. Why are we not buying our own oil? And they're paying world price for that other oil. We're not buying it from ourselves. We produce 5 million barrels of oil a day. That increase is 20%. That would create a major boom in Canada, period, if they bought our own oil. There's a tanker ban on the west coast, but not on the east coast, so we can't ship our oil or our natural gas, but they can. Do you remember when Germany and Japan came here with their hat in hand begging to buy liquid natural gas from us? And when Mr. Trudeau said, it's not in our business plan, because their business plan is to break you. That's their business plan. How could that not be in their business plan? The biggest economy in Europe wants to come here and they pay their bills and buy liquid natural gas from us. And we say, no, we're not interested. I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine being in business and that happening. And just to poke another stick in Danielle's eye, Australia, Carney, Brookfield shipped a great big boat, 25,000 kilometers to Canada with liquid natural gas in it. How is that good for the environment? How much fuel do you think that puppy burns? We looked it up. How much was it? 4 tons an hour of fuel. It's 25,000 kilometers back and forth. So, production. So, we're talking about how much difference if we increased our production 20% by Quebec. Slashing production by 5% will eliminate 40,000 jobs. So if we increase production by 20%, how many jobs would that create? A lot. Right? And we would have a built-in customer, guaranteed, supply them with oil, make our people better off, and how is it a no-go? Why isn't China concerned about climate change? Because they're already communist government. All right, carbon tax has cost Canadians billions of dollars over 5 years, hurting the economy while reducing CO2 emissions by 11.9 gigatons. China emits 11.9 gigatons of CO2 every day and a half. I've always said this about carbon. I told you I'm a biology grad, botany grad at U of A. I understand the carbon cycle. Carbon is the gas of life. If you want to green up a greenhouse, you put more carbon dioxide. That's how it works. If you want things to be greener and grow better, CO2. We're carbon. We're made of carbon. So how can it be bad? I'm not saying pollute the world. Trust me, I'm totally against that. I live on the shores of a lake, and I suck my sewage out every month and I don't have to. I'm on 5 water committees in my area. I donate more to Ducks Unlimited and those people that do environmental stuff than probably anybody in the room. So I'm not about polluting. I'm outside a lot. I hunt and fish, I'm outside a lot. I love the outdoors. That's why I moved and why I live where I live. I don't believe in pollution, but that's not the problem here. Clean it all up. I 100% agree with that. Do you remember when Edmonton used to have brown on top of it, used to drive in? They clean that all up, perfect. But they can't kill industry. Now that's all done. This is the next step. China produces all of that CO2, and where does the coal come from? Right here. Literally, this part of the world. They put whole trainfuls of coal and they go right down the west coast to the only port in North America that will ship coal, and that's Vancouver. Okay. If none of this convinced you, I want you to look at this. Norway came to Alberta to study our oil patch and see what they could do with the money. Norway has a 1.95 trillion US dollar oil fund. Alberta is $100 billion in debt. We produce 5 million barrels of oil a day, and Norway produces 2 million barrels of oil a day. Get it? Where's the money? Where'd the money go? And they're shutting our production down. We could produce more. But what's the point of producing more if they're stealing it? Where's it going? We have an old saying in retail. I sold $1 million worth of product today. That's the good news. The bad news is I didn't make any money. Right? All right, now this is going to make it even clearer for you. Saudi Arabia on the right, Canada on the left, populations are the same. Saudi exports oil, oil byproducts, and silica. Canada exports oil, forestry, coal, hydroelectric, natural gas, fisheries, diamonds, copper, nickel, iron ore, aluminum, and silver, and you don't see any agricultural products there. We are $2.1 trillion in debt. They are $260 billion in debt, which for them is a rounding error. We pay 40% national average income tax. They pay none. We pay 13% national average sales tax. They pay none. They get an oil check every month from the government. Every month. We get none. And they have free health care, same as us. We rank in the world first in uranium, first in potash, second in nickel, third in oil, fifth in gold, and first in fresh water. And there's no forestry and there's no agriculture in there, and we're broke. How's that work? 88% of our exports go straight south to the USA. I was actually on the phone talking to oil producers, and I said, if Alberta becomes independent, is there any chance that they could shut that oil off? He says, not a chance in hell. They need it. So they're not going to shut oil off. So just saying, everybody says, oh, we're landlocked. We're landlocked because we're policy locked. The federal government sets policy for Alberta. We cannot ship oil over our borders without permission of the federal government. And guess what? In a free and independent Alberta, BC cannot ship the 70% of the cargo that comes to Rupert and Vancouver through Alberta without permission. We could landlock BC in about a minute. So the adults in the room could probably go sit down and say, look, we've been a really good partner for you guys for 100 years. You free flow all of your product across our province and we never say a word, and we're happy to have you do it. How come we can't build a pipeline to the west coast so we can sell oil to all of those places that want it, like Korea, Japan, Taiwan? They'll take as much as we can ship them. How come? It's pretty clear to me. All right, so that's one problem. Okay, that's the financial problem. Now we're going to get into a moral, social problem. All of the bad laws that they're passing right now in Ottawa that you should be aware of, and I'm going to make you aware of them. Bill C-293 says, in the case of an emergency, which they will declare, the government can come to your farm and seize your land and your herd. And they can't run it. They don't know how to plant a crop. They don't know how to feed a cow. All they do is gatekeep. They produce nothing. Our people in Alberta are producers. We produce our wealth from the soil. They cannot do that. We don't need them. They need us. No question. I had a meeting, a long meeting, with Paul Plamondon, who is the head of the Parti Québécois. And how did he get involved in politics? Same as me. He saw the corruption and he couldn't leave it alone. He said the only level of government Alberta and Quebec don't need is the federal government. And they're right on our heels. Paul's going to get elected in the fall, and they're figuring out a way to get out. And was dead ostriches? That's 293. That's a muscle flexing exercise, ladies and gentlemen. That did not accomplish a thing. That was, the emergency was avian flu. They did not test a bird. They did not test a bird, and they killed the birds. That's the word. All right. Do you know that it's now legal for the federal government to wiretap you? Bill C-22 just passed. Oh, I want you to put all these bills together. But this is happening right now in live time. C-22 allows them to go on your phone and listen to everything you do, and you have no choice. C-8 allows them to shut you off the internet, and you have no choice, and they don't have to give you a reason why. C-15 gives Mr. Carney the ability to steal as much money as he wants. Top left. Conflict of interest. They will ignore a conflict of interest. Environmental protection, lobbying rules, labor standards, and privacy laws. They're passing this now. Mr. Carney, right this minute, has 103 or more ethics violations. They are all crimes. It is against the law for a politician to benefit from anything he does politically, personally. You understand what that? It's always been against the law. Yeah, they all do it. Since he's been the Prime Minister, 42 contracts, all with Brookfield, which is his company. C9. Fasten your seatbelts here. This is a very dangerous bill. It uses the concept of naming a group a hate group. Who names the group? The Privy Council. Unelected officials. A political entity, the Ordered Council, names a group, which is the Privy Council, a hate group. From there, the members of the group are all guilty by virtue of possession of the symbol, which they will tell you what the symbol is. They say swastika was the first one they put there, of course, because, you know, swastika is a horrible thing, and I'm not going to dispute that. But then, the symbols they're talking about, Mark Miller, the liberal, says the Bible is a hate thing, as well as Torah and the Quran. So they're picking on all religions. So this enables the government to target the religious individuals as part of the group. Right? So if you're a Christian and you wear it on a cross, and the Bible is deemed as hate, then they can deal with you. This is Canada. This is Canada. This is happening here. Now listen to this. This is the real problem. A forfeiture clause. A forfeiture clause is the punishment for being one of those guys. It's unlimited. And they debated it. They tried to get them to change this. And after 2 readings, they wouldn't debate it anymore. They rammed it through. It's passed. So the forfeiture clause is the punishment part, and they're not specifying it. They say, is it your house, is it your bank account, is it your life? You are the person by means of which the offense was committed. Now listen to this. This is it. This is part of it. May, in addition to any other punishment imposed, be ordered by the presiding provincial court judge or judge to be forfeited to His Majesty in right of the province in which that person is convicted for disposal. What does that mean? What does that mean? So when in history have they named a hate group, a religious hate group, and disposed of them? Has that ever happened? It is permission to create atrocities. And whether you deny it or you don't, doesn't change the fact that it's there. Like C-293, like Bill 22, like C-15, like all of them. Guns. How are they going to make you own nothing and be happy? The first thing they have to do is set precedent so they can seize your private property. So what is the one thing that a lot of people in Canada think you don't need? There's guns. So there's a red flag law out there. That's mostly in communist countries. This gentleman could say Mitch Sylvestre has guns at his house, and I'm not comfortable with that. So you know what would happen? The RCMP are going to come to my house based on the red flag law without a warrant, and they're going to grab all my guns and bring them to the RCMP station, and I'm going to have to prove I am innocent, not the other way around. That's the red flag law. And 9213 of the Constitution says this. This is Canada's Constitution. The sole jurisdiction of the provinces is property and civil rights, which I dare you to find something that doesn't fall into that. So the province is basically boss. So they could challenge this. I've had multiple meetings with our premier and said, hey, this is not funny. There's 375,000 PALs in Alberta, and on October 31st, the amnesty expires. So if you have not turned in your guns that they're asking for by then, you will become a criminal on November 1st. If you Danielle said she's not going to allow the RCMP to go to your house and grab them. They're going to give you kind of a, in Alberta, that's not going to work. But what about the rest of Canada? What happens then is that you will become a criminal because you violated the gun laws. And so they're going to, you can't have a PAL if you're a criminal, which is a possession acquisition license. And if you're a criminal, and you don't get a passport either, so you're not going anywhere. If you go to BC and you get caught, they can arrest you. And we're going to work really hard to get that changed before November 1st. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. So, this is hard for some people to hear. That was after the Americans beat the British in the Civil War. And they said that you need guns in your house or trained civilian soldiers to secure your democracy. So what's the first thing that they're doing? They're taking your guns away from you. Because good people don't commit crimes with their guns. The murder rate, if you own a PAL, as compared to the regular population, is like 20%. You're 5 times more likely to commit a murder as a regular Canadian than you are if you have a gun license in this country. Isn't that amazing? They're telling you right there that the reason you need guns is to protect yourself from government. That's what that is. There's the GDP. We're getting to the back of it, guys. Been a long range. 1.5%. You have to try. Mr. Carney got the keys from Mr. Trudeau. $86 billion leaves Canada, including everything that Brookfield has. Mr. Carney put all of his money in the USA. Why did those billionaires take the money out of Canada? Because they can see what's happening. They know what's going on. That's not an accident. More money laundering. Carney gives $4.3 billion to the Ukraine and to G7. 2 days later, look it up, Brookfield gets a contract for $4.3 billion to rebuild the Ukraine. What do you think the profit margin is in that? Just going to ask you. All right. Anybody know anything about universal basic income? Okay, so they're going to give, they're proposing that they make 16 the voting age, and they're going to give every 17-year-old $2,000 a month as a universal basic guaranteed income. What's the hook? No, actually it's worse than that. The hook is that if you take UBI, you will never be able to buy property again. You will sign your right to buy property again. Oh, that's the hook. Now, Naheed, Nancy, and I have lots in common. I really believe the NDP is on our side. And I'm saying that honestly, because this is the nonpartisan battle. Nobody on the other side of this, if they're not conservative, wants any of this nonsense. None of them. After the last NDP convention, Mr. Nenshi in a text says, we believe in Alberta, and we believe in Canadian energy and the good jobs it creates. We believe in more pipelines and reducing emissions. We believe in strong public services and a strong jobs-driven economy to help pay for them. This is what we're fighting for every day. I said, Naheed, call me. We're on the same team. I agree with every word of that. That's what we're doing. So he's making it very clear that they think the same way we do. Because he's not happy with the NDP and the federal government. Who in this province doesn't think they live in a democracy? Well, right now, I mean, who didn't think that they lived in a democracy before? Well, it never dawned on any of us. I thought I was in the best country in the world. It's banana republic corrupt. There's no other way to put it. All right.
Hello.
Oh, we don't want to talk to you then. No, not right now. The only person coming to save you is the version of yourself that's tired of the current situation. So I'm going to thank you, everybody. We're going to do Q&A. We went into what you have to do. You have to sign people. You have to talk to people. You have to say, hey, you know what? If you sign Alberta independence, you have nothing to lose. There is nothing to lose. If you do not sign Alberta independence, you can lose everything. That's where we're at. So it's a decision you're going to have to make. You're going to have to talk to people, get them in, because we need 1.5 billion votes. And honestly, I think we can win. I really believe we can.